just tell you a little bit about Nyaka and hand you over to grandmother Kaaka Jolly, who is going to have a longer conversation. Nyaka was started 23 years ago in a tiny village where I was born and raised. We established a school for children who are orphaned because of HIV/AIDS, but because I knew the importance of women in the society, especially grandmothers, I surrounded children with grandmothers to help them thrive and live. And this afternoon, Ugandan community is joining us via Zoom. Most of the women we work with are wearing the uniform Kaaka Jolly is wearing right here. And after the Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire spoke, the tie she had brought me, she took it from me and gave it to the Prime Minister because he was raised by a grandmother. 23 years later, ladies and gentlemen, we run schools, we run a gender-based violence program. We have a grandmother's program that is robust. I think it is #1 in the world. As we speak today at Harvard University, we are serving 23,037 grandmothers. You can clap, that's big. But after that clap, I will tell you that is out of 23 million women we could be serving. These trailblazers, heroes, are raising 92,000 children. That is more than the population of Harvard combined faculty and students. So the woman who's going to speak to you today, ladies and gentlemen, has had a hand in training, in working with women who have lost their own children and now they are raising the next generation. Thank you, Asim. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you all for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, Kaaka Jolly is the widow. She was joking with me the other day that maybe she'll find a man at Harvard before she... A mother, a grandmother, an auntie, a woman who has done it all and has touched so many lives. One of the 23,037 women amongst you. Welcome, Kaaka. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jackson, for introducing me. My English is African English. So in case you don't get me clear, please put up your hand. In case I say something, I'm a teacher by profession. So in case you don't get me clear, please put up your hand and I may repeat what I've said. Okay, I wanted to start off by greeting you in my language. And when I say Agandi, I want you to hear you say the same. Agandi.
Agandi.
Oh, that's beautiful. Then the answer is Nije. Good. Agandi means how are you? Nije said I'm fine. So at least you have learned 2 words. How are you and fine. Agandi, Nije. Agandi. And now when I say Agandi, what do you answer?
Say Nije.
Good. So I'm taking you back into class. That's good. I'm a teacher by profession. I am a mother and a grandmother. And as Jackson said, he was joking that I'm single and searching. No, now the African culture, at this age, you never think of remarrying. But if I was here, maybe I would find one. I'm a mother. God blessed me with 5 biological children. But during those days, difficult days of HIV/AIDS, many children lost their parents. And they both go, both the mother and the father. So I raised 10 more children in my house. So at one time, I had 15 children in my house. 15. Don't ask, how did you raise them? How did you feed them? What school fees? God provided. Because I'm a woman of faith. So I raised these children all in my house and treated them equally like all my biological children. They're now grown up. They finished university. They are working and they've given me grandchildren. So I have more than 30 grandchildren. and I'm expecting more grandchildren. And as I came here, I was ready to adopt more grandchildren. So whoever comes to me, you're welcome to be a grandchild. And I was really amazed, and when the former prime minister said that he was raised by a grandmother, I think grandmothers were heroes, isn't it?
Yes.
Raising even prime ministers, it's amazing, isn't it? And I'm here to speak on behalf of over 23 grandmothers.
Oh.
They are all putting on the same uniform like I do, because I identified with them much as I'm training them, and 92,000 children. And they all form of groups of 254 groups. So, but this is just in 3 districts out of over 100 districts in Uganda. So this is just a small portion in Uganda that is touching grandmothers. We have a lot of grandmothers in Uganda that need the support, but we cannot reach there. But we pray that one day we reach every grandmother in Uganda. So I want to start with a success story. We have one grandmother called Gaudensia. She's 85 years old. This grandmother has got 2 grandchildren. She used to sleep on the floor. She never had a mattress. She used to sleep on a mat. And she was living in a grass-thatched house. And every time it rained, it would leak. So she would have to, seek shelter on somebody's veranda when it is raining with her grandchildren. She didn't have light in the house. So here is the grandmother. One of the things that Nyaka did was do this for the grandmother. This grandmother, we put up a house for her, we put up a kitchen, and we put up a pit latrine for her. Now she's happy. And we gave her a solar torch, not even a solar lamp, because that is what we could afford, a solar torch that she was able to put light in the house. This grandmother, when I'm talking about a kitchen, I'm not talking about your kitchens with electric cookers and gas. This is the kitchen, outside the kitchen with 3 stones, and she has to use firewood. But at least it has shelter. So during rain, that time before we put up the kitchen, she would not be able to cook if it rained heavily. She would go hungry with her grandchildren because she would have nowhere to cook. And now she has where to cook, and she has a pit latrine. So that is that grandmother. One other thing that we did for this grandmother was to give her a loan at 1%, $27. How many of you spend 27? How much? Some of you go to the supermarket and stores and you spend more than $100, $300. For her, we gave her $27, and that was gold for her. She was able to buy goats, so she has now goats she's raising, and then she's using the droppings of the goats to get manure to put in her garden. So now she has the goats, and she's able to sell whenever the goats produce, she sells. But even now she's getting better production of food in her garden because of the manure, the droppings from the goats. So she's really doing very well. She's happy. She's now economically empowered. Before, it was misery. But now, she has that self-esteem and self-confidence. She can walk to church, she can walk into the community, and she can even be a leader after empowering her economically and putting up a decent home for her. So that is the grandmother we have. We have programs. Nyaka, we have programs. And this program for the Nyaka grandmother started in 2007. And now we have 254 groups, as I said earlier. We do that training in the capacity building with these grandmothers. Mark you, most of these grandmothers didn't go to school. So we pick a few that can be able to read and write, train them as trainers to go and train the grandmothers back in the communities. So train them in parenting skills. Remember, there is a generation gap. A grandmother and, when you're a grandmother and you have a grandchild, there should be a parent in between. So you may not be sure of what to do. So there is a generation gap, so we do training in parenting skills. We train them in life skills. These grandmothers don't know their rights. They don't know they have their rights. So one of the things is that life skills. We train them into leadership skills. And some of these grandmothers, after training them into leadership skills, they have now gained self-confidence, self-esteem. They're able to go back into the community and stand for leadership at a lower rate. So we have some of the grandmothers that are now leaders in the community. We've trained them into change agents. And these grandmothers have gone back into the communities as change agents, as opinion leaders. And they are doing great work. They are encouraging fellow grandmothers and even fighting for their rights. One other thing is micro business. We have a village bank and a revolving fund for the grandmothers. Now in Uganda, if you are to get a loan, the interest rate is from 19 to 28. We are giving these grandmothers at 1%. So we are able to encourage these grandmothers to borrow money, be able to do something. After being trained into business skills, we have now a lot of grandmothers that are doing businesses into, they are also doing agricultural activities, and now they are thriving, economically independent. Originally, the grandmother in the African setting, you are economically dependent, and you depend on your children. But now some of the children are not there. Those children that will be supporting the grandmothers are not there. They passed on, and they left with their grandchildren. So now these grandmothers are economically independent. They're able to do business. They're able to feed their families. And we have schools, but not all the 92,000 children that go to our schools, because we have only 2 schools. So they're able to pay school fees for these children. So which is really good. One other thing that we discuss is gender-based violence, where I don't know here, but in Africa, let me talk about Uganda, grandmothers are abused badly. In some areas they call them old witches. That old witch, and really it affects their sense of living and self-esteem. So we've talked, and we also have a program for gender-based violence. We even have opened a room, and we have even the staff that are there to do the counseling in case there is a challenge with gender and domestic violence. So now they are aware about their rights, and if there are anything with gender-based violence, they're able even to report to the police and fight for their own rights. And one other thing was, of course, grabbing the property. When the grandmother gets old, they think she's no longer useful, so they won't take away the land, they won't take away anything that she has. But now they are aware of their own properties. We've even trained them to write wills, so that even when she passes on, her property knows where, people know where her property goes. We have discussed health issues with the grandmothers. As I told you earlier on, most of the grandmothers lost their children through HIV/AIDS. And unfortunately, a few of the grandchildren were also HIV positive. So the grandmothers didn't know that there was HIV. So we had to create, awareness about HIV/AIDS to them. Because some of them thought that these these children were bewitched. They couldn't believe that they died of HIV/AIDS. So now we've trained the grandmothers home-based care for these children. We've trained them how to access ARVs. Now we trained them, and we have advocated at the health centers to give grandmothers priority whenever they go there, so that they are given a line and they're able to be given medicine and whatever is required. So we talked about health issues, not only about HIV/AIDS, but even uncommunicable diseases that affect grandmothers. And as I said, we talked about one of the other programs was, of course, the village bank and the revolving fund that has really made life easier for them. Then one other thing is we have schools, 2 schools that is providing education for the children, not all the children, but a few children. And the best thing is these children, once they go into these schools, they have an opportunity to finish university at free education. So that has helped. And in that process, we have had more girls in the schools, and we have taken care of them up to university level. We have even one who is a lawyer and now is really advocating for the rights of the orphan children and grandmothers. We are happy about it. One other program that we have is houses. We put up homes for the grandmothers. I want you people, you are very lucky here. You know, you have homes, and even when you can't afford your own, you can still go into a certain home where you pay, but it's a comfortable place. Now, most of our grandmothers, when the children died, were left with nothing. Some of them were grass-thatched houses, you know, leaking homes, leaking roofs, and no latrines and so forth. So we put up homes for the grandmothers, put up pit latrines for them and kitchen. And also we've got some implements for them, like hose, like water harvesting containers, because some of them don't have a source of clean water nearby. But one other thing that we try to do is to try and get clean water near the grandmothers. So that is one of the things that we do. Then one other thing is we have group meetings for social support, social cycle support. They meet together once a month or once a week, depending whatever group they agree on. They have made government within those groups. There's a chairperson, a vice chair, a treasurer, secretary, a prayer warrior, a mobilizer, So they meet together and they sit together. If they have a challenge, they cry together. If you have something nice to talk about, they laugh together. And what is more important is bringing them together and they all identify with each other and laugh together. And one of the things I was training them, I said, please try to laugh as many times as possible, at least 8 times a day. So whenever they meet, they said, oh, Kaaka Jole told us to laugh. So one brings in, cracks a joke, and they laugh about 8 times. They have got a support system in that if one grandmother is not well, this other grandmother would go and visit her, maybe take her to the hospital. But also remember, these grandmothers survive on the gardens, the food they grow at home. So these gardens need weeding, need planting, food and so forth. So if it is a season for planting and this grandmother is not well, these other grandmothers team up and go and plant food for her. And when it is time for weeding, they go. When it is time for harvesting, they go. So they have that support system that they work together and has encouraged them. And I really am happy for what is happening. What is about the program for gender equality? Now, Nyaka supports about 60% of the girl children. We support them at school and make sure that we train them. We have sometimes holiday training into life skills also. We get mentors for them. And we believe that most of them now have thrived. They have come out gone through the school, and they are working with their heads high. So we no longer have. Now the reason why we do this is because we have a challenge of early marriages and early pregnancies. I remember the first lady was saying that last night that if you marry at an early age, it is rape, isn't it? For me, I would call it really serious abuse. And sometimes parents do agree into these early marriages. So when you equip these girls with life skills, then we are reducing the challenges of early marriages. Now we are starting to think about the boy child, as somebody was sharing here. But we were focusing on the girl child first because they are the ones who are really victims. We have the economic empowerment, where we give this a 1% loan so that these women are economically empowered, the grandmothers that are still able to do businesses, and they are doing well. And the microfinance support. And we have that community leadership where the grandmothers are leaders and they are doing very well as leaders. And they have gained self-confidence, they have gained self-esteem, and they are very resilient in raising these grandchildren. Now, as I said, that in the African culture, most of the grandmothers are called old witch. But I'm glad to say that the grandmothers have changed from being old witches into unsung heroes. Unsung heroes. So when I saw this Prime Minister here talking about his grandmother, I said that grandmother must have been an unsung hero to raise up somebody to stand up to be a Prime Minister. So we are having these grandmothers raising up grandchildren and the unsung heroes. Definitely one of the challenges is we have touched a small group of grandmothers, but we hope to cover the districts or other districts if we are able to make it. And one of the challenges that we still have on the government side, we still have the old persons bill that advocates for the rights of old people that is still being held up in the government, in the parliament. So we are praying, advocating for that. And one other thing is what we Nyaka has advocated for is these grandmothers to get get involved in the government programs where they give out seeds, free seeds for planting, and sometimes agricultural implements like hoes and so forth. So the grandmothers have been engaged in that, and we are happy that there is life in the grandmothers' lives because of Nyaka. Thank you.
In our local language, since you are learning languages, Webale. Webale means thank you. Kaaka Jole is so humble, she will not tell you that she is a representative of old persons in the Prime Minister's office in Uganda. So she is influencing policy and making sure that every grandmother's voice is heard. I also want to emphasize, when we say grandmother, don't think of American grandmother. Some of these women are 35 years old, but the honor of being called a grandmother in our culture is so, people break the 10th commandment. Do not envy wanting to be a grandmother. Because when a grandmother enters a house, young people will stand up so she can sit down. So when we say grandmother, don't think of people who can't work. Those are 23,000 business women. Right now, about 20,000 of them have phones. Next thing for us is FinTech, for the grandmothers. This summer we are making 3 documentaries of these grandmothers so we can send it around the world. Fatima told me we are stopping at 1. So we are going to stop our conversation right here. We have 5 minutes of questions. If you have questions for Kaaka Joy, please ask her as many as you want. Then they have set up a room for Kaaka Joy to sit down, and you can find her and ask her more questions. She's here the whole day, and tomorrow she's getting on a plane and go to do more work in California. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. On behalf of all the grandmothers around the world, we thank you, we honor you, we respect you, and we serve you until you rest, we want to rest. Thank you.